Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the AFC East Summit, where rivalries become one. I'm joined today by my good friend Jackson and Dolphin Keith. Brett is going to be representing the Patriots. He's a little bit under the weather right now, so he's not going to show his face. But when we get to the Patriots conversations, Brett will be the guy. But without further ado, Jackson, how you doing, my man?
Doing great. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. We're excited to do another show, talk about our teams, and we're inching closer to week one. Just cannot wait to get started.
Oh, you're telling me. How about you, Keith? Let's hear it.
Oh, I'm ready to go, man. It's been a long time coming for the season to start, and preseason is only wetting my palate. And man, just watching the Dolphins play against the Texans, I'm so ready to get this thing started.
Yeah, I hear you. This is like the worst period of time because it's so close, but then it feels like it's going to be forever. Reminds me of like my last 2 weeks of basic training when I knew like, okay, I'll be done, and then the first few weeks flew right by. Then I'm like, dang, get to go home soon to see my family, and then it's like, wow, this 2 weeks is taking forever. It's kind of how it feels right now. But let's just get into it. We're going to talk first how the week 2 preseason went, and why don't we start with Jackson? And let us know how you felt about your New York Jets, and maybe if there's players that you think won a roster spot or took themselves out of a contention for a roster spot, or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. So week two, we lost the game. Our offense throughout the game was looked a little sluggish. Zach Wilson came out there. He seems way better than he was last year. He's not making the chaotic plays and throws that he was last season, but still he's doing the quick throws. He's not really looking downfield at all. And our defense is throughout these three games, because we were in the Hall of Fame game, so our third game, our defense has been all over the field. We haven't played a single starter, but the defensive line has been attacking these backup offensive linemen. Bryce Huff and Jermaine Johnson have just been causing havoc throughout preseason. So I absolutely love to see that. And then a couple of names that have like won a roster spot. Trey Dean, a undrafted free agent this past offseason, strong safety. He has been flying over the field, just making tackles left and right. And then with our Dalvin Cook coming in, we were kind of looking at like Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight as two possibilities of getting cut or traded. And Zonovan Knight came out there and laid a dud. He did not look good at all. He fumbled the ball on another play. He fumbled it, but his knee was down, so almost two fumbles in the game. His yards per carry were not good. So I think Trey Dean made a good stretch to get a roster spot, and Zonovan Knight made a good case to get cut.
Well, it's always good to hear, the people that might be backups or just depth in general is playing really well, because then if an event one of your starters goes out, then you have full confidence in the people that are coming in for them. And Keith, a little bit better week for you guys this week compared to the first one. So how do you feel about for one, how do you feel about your starters being in for the two drives, and then I think two drives, and then how do you feel about just the win overall?
Well, I mean, we say two drives. It was basically a drive and a half because Tua threw an interception on the first play of the game to Zach Cunningham. Texans returned to the Dolphins 6, and then they got stopped on fourth down. So the Dolphins, no harm, no foul. And then the second play from scrimmage, they had a 5-yard loss to put them down at the 1. The play was damn near safety. And then Tua proceeded to calm down and drive the Dolphins down the field 99 yards for a touchdown. In the box score, it was a 94-yard drive, but it was a 99-yard drive because that was second down from the 1-yard line. Right. So it was encouraging to see. It was nice to see. I know you guys. I know we've talked about this in the past, where I don't want to see the starters in preseason, especially guys who are injury prone the way Tua is. But you know what? Tua got hit a couple times, and he bounced back up. He even made the tackle on the interception that he threw, and again, he bounced back up. So it was nice to see the Dolphins bounce back from a lackluster start to that game. Now, there were good things and bad things to take away from that game. There was Devon Achane, their third-round rookie, ran the ball really well. Salvin Ahmed probably solidified his own roster spot and ran the ball really well. that probably means that Myles Gaskin is the odd man out in the Dolphins' backfield, unless the Dolphins trade for Jonathan Taylor. I don't know.
We can talk about that later. We can talk about
Yeah. But no, Raheem Mostert ran the ball really well. Devon Achane ran the ball really well. Salvon Ahmed had 131 total yards on the game, including a really long run at the end of the half. Where the Dolphins were basically just trying to run the clock out, and Salvon Ahmed took them down inside the Texans 20, and the Dolphins ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive as well. So it was an encouraging game. There were certain offensive linemen who I was encouraged by. Like Kendall Lamb played really well left tackle for the Dolphins in place of Teron Armstead. Isaiah Wynn, he was okay in place of Liam Eichenberg. He got the start in this game in place of Liam Eichenberg, and he did all right. Austin Jackson was adequate. He wasn't great. I went back and looked at every play that Austin Jackson was in, and he was caught off balance a lot. He was driven into the backfield by Will Anderson a few times, who, by the way, looks like an absolute stud for the Texans. He looks like a 10-sack-a-year guy for the next decade. He's going to be a beast. But he drove Austin Jackson back into his lap a couple of times in that game, and all I've been looking for from Austin Jackson was adequacy, and that's mostly what I got, I suppose. The Dolphins' defense was solid. You didn't see Xavier Howard in this game. You didn't see a few of the other starters like Christian Wilkins, but they were good. They were good. It was a good, nice bounce back performance after a lackluster effort against the Falcons. So I guess I'm mildly encouraged.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand it over to Brett first, but before I do that, if you're new, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below your thoughts. Even if you're not from the AFC East, we welcome all fan bases across the world, so we'd love to have you comment. Brett, from the Go Patriots podcast, go ahead. Did you watch the Patriots game at all? I know they ended early because of an incident, so hopefully that player is okay. But if you watched it, why don't you go ahead and talk about it?
So I watched a little of the game. I was going back and forth on it, but I did get some insight on the game. I saw the beginning where Mac Jones was in. He looked pretty good. I'm going to say he was 6 of 9 for 52 yards overall. Ramondre Stevenson looked good as well. 4 carries for 27 yards and a touchdown. Some of the players that kind of had an up and down game, Bailey Zappi, the backup to Mac Jones, quarterback. He finished the game 10 of 22 for 117 yards and a touchdown. But he looked a little sloppy in the game overall. Just a couple of mistakes that he made, not really going through his progressions the way that he should have. And the officiating in the game was a little bit sloppy too. That's another thing that some Patriots fans are questioning about. But the biggest takeaway from the game has to be the Isaiah Bolden being taken off the field on a stretcher. That was something that happened with 10 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And he did have all feeling in his extremities, which is good. And he was released from the hospital, which is another good sign. But the Patriots have canceled their joint practices with the Tennessee Titans this week. So that's a bad sign for the Patriots overall, because you want to practice against other teams, but it's understandable too with what they're going through as well.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad that he's seems to be doing better, and I haven't heard anything else.
From what I've heard is he's released from the hospital. He's doing good. And it was just a bad thing that happened against Malik Heath. He caught a slant pass across the middle, and then he then realized that Bolden was injured. And he knows Bolden from his college days, so it's kind of hard with
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's kind of hard to see, especially with Bolden going to Jackson State and Heath's from Jackson, Mississippi. So it's hard to see that happening. But, my thoughts and prayers are with Bolden. Hopefully he gets better as soon as possible. And, I hope to see him on the field very shortly when the Bills take on the Patriots.
Absolutely. We all hope that because in the end, it's more important than the actual game. So hopefully he gets well soon. I'll talk about the Bills and then maybe I'll let Brett, if he's up to it, talk about them as well. It really wasn't a great game. And I see a lot of people always talking about, well, it's just preseason, it's just preseason. But then if someone did good, they talk about how good they did. And then is it not preseason then when they do good? But here's the other thing that I always think about when your ones are out there, it's really to see the culmination of the off season. How did you guys do? What did you guys work on? How did you guys gel together? What's the product so far? And what we saw was pretty bad all across the board. The offensive line looked awful, like game time. But then when you rewatch the film, for some reason my L22 is not showing, so I had to watch the condensed version and keep pressing rewind every play. And the line the interior was really good. The tackles were fair with a few bad plays. But then I see people, they say like, oh well, Josh took like 10 steps back, and then it's hard for your tackles. Or Kincaid missed a chip block, and then Dawkins wasn't able to recover quick enough. On the Kincaid one, Dawkins just didn't get off the ball. The guy was in the backfield before Dawkins even got out of his 3-point stance. So that's just an excuse. And then whether Josh takes 10 or 50 steps back, your job as offensive lineman is still to block. I don't care if it's harder for you; it's still your responsibility. So, it's a thing where it doesn't matter as a win and loss, but it matters to see where you're at. It's like a benchmark. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but how did you guys perform? Did you guys look like you were a good unit? Did everything look to be clicking? And then I was hoping that maybe they wouldn't have to play in week 3, but I think even though I'd like to rest them, I think maybe they should get one drive just to see, okay, we had a little bit of miscommunication. Things didn't go as we thought. Now let's try. And I felt like to a point the Steelers were more of like working on scheme, whereas most of the time you don't have a pure game plan against a team in the preseason, but you're just kind of bland and vanilla, which I think that's what we did to a point. And we saw a lot of good. There was Cyrus Torrance had another good week. Connor McGovern, our new left guard, looked awesome, and Mitch Morse was good as well. So those three looked great. And then Diggs made a good catch. Kincaid made a couple good catches. Jordan Mims had a good couple rushes and a touchdown. Shorter had 5 catches and a touchdown. So there was some good. Middle linebacker was horrible. Matt Milano even didn't look that great. So it's not what you wanted to see, especially coming off that Bengals loss. And you're playing a good team like the Jets, who has a great defensive front as well as a secondary. But if you can stop the defense, I always say, as good as the Jets are on defense, if you could stop their pass rush, it makes it harder on the corners, because what makes them really good is because they're so aggressive that if you have no time to throw the ball and you're just like making quick decisions, it's easier for those corners to react and beat you. But if you're holding back guys like Quentin Williams and Huff and Jermaine Johnson and JFM, then it gives the receivers more time to make something happen. So it'll be interesting. I think they can get it together. But overall, I wasn't pleased. And again, I know it's preseason. It's not the end of the world, but it does matter, especially because the ones are out there. And, it seemed like they were just like, oh, it's preseason. It don't matter. I mean, Josh did good. Josh made a lot of good. He was 7 for 10. And he made like a 50-yard pass on a 3rd down to Gabe Davis. They got called back for holding. So, I mean, he made some great throws. It wasn't really Josh's fault. But I guess you could say his his drop back was too much, and it made it hard for the tackles, and he put him in bad positions. But regardless, overall as a unit, it wasn't that great. Expect to be better in week 1, but again, we'll see. My other point is the people that say, oh, it's just preseason, it doesn't matter. So let's say we lose week 1. Then they're going to say, oh, it's only week 1, it doesn't matter. Oh, it's one game, it doesn't matter. Then you win a few, and you lose like 1 or 2 in a row like we did last year. Then they're going to be like, oh, it's just 2 games. You can't win them all. It doesn't matter. Then we win a game even though we played bad. Oh, we got the win. It doesn't matter. Then you go to the playoffs and you lose 27-10 at home to the Bengals. So I know it's
At
not.
what point does it start to matter?
Yeah, it's not the be all end all, but it does matter. And even Dick
Yeah.
said it. He validated my point last year. And Jake, if he's watching, he'll remember. He always said, "Well, we got the win. It's awesome." But even Dick said after the season was over, the last like 8 weeks, yeah, we won all the games. But he said, but it didn't feel right. We weren't winning the right way. We were winning, but it didn't feel like we got the win the right way. And that's exactly what I was saying. And then it came. We barely beat Miami, even though, I mean, offensively, Skylar Thompson didn't do that great, but they were in the game, and they made it hard for us. We got the win, which is, in the playoffs, it's a good to win. And then we shit ourselves against the Bengals. But I'm done ranting for that. Brett, do you want to say a couple things about the game, or are you ready to move on?
Yeah, I do. A couple of things that you did mention that I liked about it. Yeah, it was a very sloppy game. One thing I want to add to that is the amount of penalties that we saw from the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
That's inexcusable. It's something that, that needs to be fixed. That's one thing that I will say negative about it, but there is some positives to what happened out there. One thing that Bills fans should be very excited about, Dalton Kincaid. He looked excellent, especially with Matt Barkley out there. Caught a couple good passes from Josh Allen as well. But when Matt Barkley came out there, he really took it to the next level. And Bills fans should be excited about this kid because he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver for the Bills. Even though Gabe Davis is the number 2 wide receiver, he's going to be the number 2 target out there on the field every single time. And he looks like the Travis Kelce prototype. He's going to make a ton of plays for the Bills. He's going to be on the field a lot, which is going to be good. And then outside Torrance.
Can I ask you something about Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times you don't see tight ends make a big impact in their first year. Do you expect, and Sean, you too, do you guys expect, do you expect anything from Dalton Kincaid in his rookie season?
You go first, Brett.
Yeah, I do, Keith. I think that he's going to go for about 600 yards, which is pretty good for a rookie.
Okay.
4 to 5 touchdowns, somewhere in that range. I think it's going to be a slow learning process at the beginning, but I think that he's going to catch on, much like Dawson Knox did last year, where he had the 4 or 5 touchdowns in games in a row. A touchdown in every game for 5 straight games. So I expect something like that. But I do think that he's going to come on the field and he's going to be a matchup nightmare. And it's just going to take him a little bit. He's going to go through that rookie wall, just much like every rookie does.
Yeah, but it's especially prominent with tight ends in the NFL for whatever reason. There's a steep learning curve for tight ends for, a number of reasons. But that's why I'm asking about Dalton Kincaid, because I know his physical skill set is so evident to anybody who's paying attention. But as a rookie, I think you're going to be leaning more on Dawson Knox a lot more than Dalton Kincaid. I don't think you're going to see a lot of Dalton Kincaid. So I just wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on all that.
Yeah, it's a good point. My thing is he is a tight end, but the way he runs routes, he's like a receiver. So he'll find himself open a lot. And when Gabe Davis, and Diggs are on the field, nobody's getting double teamed. Whereas last year, Diggs would get double teamed, and Davis had his ankle injury, and he said that bothered him the whole year. I still think it doesn't matter if you have an ankle injury, if you have hands, because you should be able to catch it. But if he's how he's been in camp, and Diggs is Diggs, and Kincaid running those routes, he'll get open and get some targets. And the other thing with me is I like Brett's stat line to a point, but we drafted him in the first round, and that's kind of like Isaiah McKenzie, what he did. I didn't want to draft a guy in the first round to give me Isaiah McKenzie stats when you can have Isaiah McKenzie for that, when we needed a right tackle, and so on and so forth. That's why I was mad about the pick. I don't want to put high expectations on the kid, but when you trade up for someone, trade it to not only trade up, but to another rival in the AFC in the Jaguars who are up and coming, who they then take a tackle that we could have had. And it's all depends. So we have to use him, and he has to be putting substantial product into the field. And I know people might say, "Oh, he's a kid; it'll be his first year. Like, give him 2 or 3 years." We don't really have that time because look how good the AFC is, and we need to utilize what we got now to the fullest. So I totally get your point, Keith, and we'll see. It all depends on how they utilize him because I know he can get open. I know he's got great hands. So it all depends on if I mean, also we didn't see him and Knox together on the field at all in the preseason, so I think they're holding out for that. And again, with him and Knox in the field, Diggs, Davis, it's going to be someone's going to be open always. And I mean, Kincaid's going to be a matchup nightmare, like Brett said. I mean, Knox is good, but he's not as quick and doesn't run the routes like Kincaid does. So hopeful for him. I may be putting too much pressure on him to perform, but you draft him in the first round for a reason. And considering we drafted Elam in the first round and traded up for him the year prior, and now he's having trouble being the backup cornerback too, it's you really kind of want one of these first round picks to hit. And it's the first actual first round offensive player we got since Josh Allen. So usually we load up on defense, and then you wonder why did you decide that when you got a player like Josh? Why are you going defensive end instead of wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, offensive guard? And that always bothered me. But we'll see. Do you want to bring up Mike's comment, Brett?
Yeah. I was going to add something to the Bills after Mike's comment, but
yeah, he said Joe Marino. Shout out to Joe Marino, he does great stuff. Put 3 of the pressures on Josh Allen's pocket management, not the O-line. And like thanks for that, Mike. And like I said, to a point, that's correct. But I always say I want everybody to formulate their own opinion. But I was watching Joe Miller and John Fina's off tackle show, and John Fina played for the Buffalo Bills, right tackle. And he even said, even though he doesn't like Josh's, taking too many steps back, it's still on the offensive line to protect. And then he's the one that mentioned, and I mean, I saw it too, but when he mentioned it, I'm like, oh, okay, he mentioned it, I saw it, so that's good. Because Joe Marino also mentioned that the Dawkins pressure that he blamed on Kincaid, that Dawkins just didn't get off the line of scrimmage. So that's all. I mean, it's all subjective, and people may see differently. So I'm not going to say he's wrong. I'm not going to say I'm right. But John Fina did kind of put it in perspective of from a pro offensive tackle perspective, and I mean, it does matter. Josh could step up, and Fina did mention that he should. If you drop back 11, take 3 steps forward. If you drop back 10, take 2 steps forward. But still, when it comes down to it, your job is to protect.
Sean, if I may, isn't that something that happens with Josh Allen a lot though, where he kind of runs backwards instead of stepping up in the pocket? Isn't this something normal with Josh Allen? Should the Bills offensive line be somewhat accustomed to this?
Right. So that's right to a point. He does step up, but there is times where he takes a step backs and then he runs vertical or lateral because of or maybe leaves the pocket too early. But that's a little bit of PTSD because the offensive line was so putrid last year. He oftentimes had to roll out before he wanted to. So in this game where he could have stepped up, there was one play in particular where Spencer Brown got absolutely destroyed by T.J. Watt, and then Torrance came and saw that out of the corner of his eye, and then jacked Watt in the chest with his shoulder, and then Josh scrambled instead of stepping up and throwing it because he felt the pressure. But as last year, if that happened, he would have got obliterated and probably got injured. So he probably was feeling like, well, I got to leave now. But now when you got better guards like McGovern and Torrance, he's going to have to mentally trust them more. And again, I wouldn't trust if Spencer Brown was blocking for me. So I understand why he does it. But you're right. He does oftentimes – he takes a step back and then he runs lateral instead of stepping up in the pocket. But, again, part of that is also because – the constant pressure that he's always under. And again, we always mention it on our show. The offensive line was bad as it is and gave up a lot of sacks, but imagine if Josh Allen wasn't the quarterback. Imagine if like Mac Jones or Matt Ryan was the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. They'd be giving up 85 sacks a year or more. But I mean, those are things that Josh can work on too. But I think as the comfort level grows with the offensive line as a whole, because again, we got 2 new pieces and, they're interior. They're not used to being next to the tackles or the center. They're all going to get gelled up together. So I think they weren't great as a unit, but they'll still start to increase and be better as the year goes on. Hopeful for that. One thing I was upset about was everybody mentioned Spencer Brown needs a whole offseason. He was injured, all these excuses. He needs to be with the offensive line coach. He'll get fixed up. And then when you watch the game compared to tape last year, his technical issues were still there. So what did that whole offseason do for you? You were working with Aaron Cromer a lot in training camp. What did he help you with? Because, yeah, it's TJ Watt, but your technique is technique no matter who you play. You could be playing me or Bruce Smith. It should always be the same. And we were missing that. So I feel like I'm ranting now, but we'll segue into the Jonathan Taylor news. And because I'm assuming that neither the Bills, Jets, or Patriots will get Jonathan Taylor, and I don't think the Dolphins will get him either, but they're the best out of the four, which he might not even go to the AFC East. I got a couple spots he might go, but I'll hand it over to Keith. Do you even want Jonathan Taylor? Not that he's not good. He's a top 3 running back when healthy, but I'm thinking for you guys, is it worth, because they're going to want picks, and you guys don't have the picks, and he's going to want a contract extension.
Yep.
So you might have to get rid of someone like Christian Wilkins or what. People said they might get trade Ogba, but they don't want Ogbah's crappy contract. So folks will take him. So how do you?
I've heard about Cedric Wilson's contract too, and they don't want Cedric Wilson's contract. To answer your question just succinctly, Sean, do I want Jonathan Taylor? Yeah, I do. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best backs in the league. But I take a similar stance to Jonathan Taylor to what I took with Dalvin Cook, except, now it's for trade. But I didn't want Dalvin Cook at the price that Dalvin Cook wanted to be paid at. And Jonathan Taylor wants to get paid, and he's younger and probably better than Dalvin Cook. So I'm willing to pay him a little bit more. But am I willing to give Jonathan Taylor a contract extension at the expense of losing a Christian Wilkins? No, I'm not. Christian Wilkins is far too important to the Dolphins to lose him for a running back when the Dolphins already have a running back room that's pretty much all set. So
I'm okay with you guys losing Wilkins.
Oh, you're okay with that, Brett?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's fine with me. Hey,
what are you guys' thoughts on the Dolphins?
It's a Walmart Quentin Williams.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Christian Wilkins is an awesome player, and more so than being an awesome player, he's so awesome for the Dolphins locker room. He's an integral locker room voice, an integral locker room figure for the Dolphins. He's a catalyst for good feelings and just he's a catalyst for good things for the entire locker room. He's so instrumental to the Dolphins' success that I can't imagine saying I'd rather have a Jonathan Taylor in the fold than a Christian Wilkins. Yeah. As good as Jonathan Taylor is. Right. And then you add the draft capital on top of that. The Colts want a first-round pick. They're high if they think they're getting a first-round pick for Jonathan Taylor. Nobody's giving them that. But, they can get a high second-round pick. They can get a second-round pick and maybe a fourth-round pick or something of that ilk. So I don't see I see the Dolphins kicking the tires on this, but ultimately I don't see the Dolphins getting a deal done for Jonathan Taylor because it's just too steep. It's too rich.
At what point are you comfortable with a asking price from the Indianapolis Colts?
I would be comfortable with a second-round pick and an AAV of about $10 million a year for Jonathan Taylor.
Oh yeah, he'd never take that.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants at least 16.
I agree. I agree with you, Sean. But that's where I'm comfortable. So, as far as who I think Jonathan Taylor is going to ultimately go to, I see the Bears trading for Jonathan Taylor. I think that makes a lot of sense. It just doesn't make enough sense for the Dolphins, just like Dalvin Cook didn't make sense for the Dolphins. It made sense for the Jets, Jackson. Dalvin Cook made sense for the Jets. He did. He made a lot more sense for the Jets than he did for the Dolphins. But Jonathan Taylor doesn't make sense for the Dolphins, not at what the asking price is going to be.
Right.
Let's say they trade for Jonathan Taylor for a second rounder and he signs a $14 to $15 million per year. How are you going to feel?
Well, I'm going to feel pumped about how awesome the Dolphins offense looks on paper. But I'm also going to think, does that mean they're not going to sign Christian Wilkins? Does that mean they're not going to sign
Waddle.
Jalen Phillips or Jalen Waddle, or, they have a ton of extensions coming up to very key players. And to trade for a running back that they don't necessarily need right now just seems like a luxury pick. Just seems a little foolhardy on the Dolphins' part.
Yeah.
So, initially I'll be like, well, look at the Dolphins offense. Look at all the pieces they have.
Yeah.
And then reality is going to set in. It's like, well, what about Christian Wilkins? What about Connor Williams? What about Zach Taylor? Just the list goes on and on of guys the Dolphins need to re-sign, and they don't have the cap space to re-sign them all.
That's right. People got to go.
Yep.
And I kind of compare the Dolphins and the Bills with Jonathan Taylor, kind of similar. Your best players are Hill and Waddle. If you get Jonathan Taylor, he's going to get at least 20 to 30 touches, catches and rushes in a game. That means you're taking away from your $30 million receiver in Hill, who's also your best player, and Jalen Waddle. Yeah, you guys will still be great, but you're taking touches away from those two. When if we had a guy like Jonathan Taylor for the same reason, you're getting the ball out of Josh's hands, and then you're also paying $300 million for a quarterback, and then guys like Diggs and Davis and Kincaid aren't going to get touches. So as much as they make our team even more Super Bowl contenders, Dalvin Cook for the Jets, that's pretty good because it's smart to let Breece Hall wait a few weeks, especially now, because I forgot who mentioned it, but in college you play 12 games. He's never played 17 games to begin with, and then he tore his ACL, and now some people expect him to play week 1 and play 17 games. It's smart if you want him for the future, because the chances of him coming back being the same is already low because it doesn't happen often with running back. But you want to preserve him as much as you can because he's such a great talent. Now you got a guy like Dalvin Cook who could step in, be a bell cow, and then you got guys like Bam Knight and Carter who can be 2 and 3. And then when Hall's ready to come back, then Hall's the number 1 back, and then Dalvin Cook's got to know his place because he's great, but your future is Breece Hall. So,
Jackson, if I may, what were your thoughts on? I don't think we've gotten your thoughts on the Dalvin Cook signing.
So initially, I was a little shocked by the price. I was not expecting him to get a base of around, I think it was 7.1. I was expecting more of a base around 4 to 5 with incentives to get up to 7. So for the price, I wasn't loving the price. But then you also have to take into consideration Aaron Rodgers takes around a $30 million pay cut. So that money's got to go somewhere. And just what Sean was mentioning, easing Breece back and prolonging his career, prolonging his season is just such a big benefit. And also what I like about Dalvin is historically the first half of the season is when he's at his peak. And then the second half is when his production kind of slows down. So maybe if he's sharing the workload throughout the year with Breece, maybe by the end of the year he'll be more productive in the playoffs times. But I'm just super excited to have a 2-headed monster potentially if Breece comes back healthy. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Absolutely. Before I hand it to Brett, I think a good place for Jonathan Taylor would be a team like Washington, who doesn't have money tied into a quarterback and might be able to pay for a guy like that. And they already have a great defense. And I thought about maybe a team in the AFC South, or not the NFC South, so like the Panthers, but they got Miles Sanders. But one of those teams where they don't have a great, or a Saints even, great situation, but they have a chance at the division, and you add a Jonathan Taylor, you're definitely going to win the division. And the Commanders, great defense. We got Terry McLaurin.
Saints is interesting, Sean. I never thought of the Saints. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, you guys like teams like the Saints, and you got Derek Carr, Chris Olave. That'd be pretty solid. And I don't know their money situation though, so I'm just saying off of what I think would be cool. Especially just keep them out of the AFC just in general, just because teams are already stacked enough. So
I feel like every good player is going to the AFC. The NFC is not getting anyone.
Yeah, because not to brag about Buffalo, but Buffalo was at the top. They had a great team. Then the Jets started getting players to compete, and then now the Dolphins got players first. Then the Jets got players. Patriots got players now because everyone wants to win the division, make the playoffs, and they see how good the AFC is in general. But then now it's the gap was like this. Now it's 3 teams are pretty close.
It's turning into an arms race. It's turning into an arms race,
And then once one domino falls, the rest of them do. So, Bills got great players, and Dolphins get Tyreek Hill, Dolphins get whoever, Jalen Ramsey.
But it begs the question. It begs the question: what were the 3 teams doing while the Patriots were ruling the division for 20 years? There's no arms race then. We just kind of let the Patriots do it.
Yeah.
And the thing that kills me is that the Dolphins are finally good after 20 years of the Patriots ruling the division, and the Bills are good, the Jets are good, the Patriots are still a team that you have to look out for. It's
annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Especially because when we won our first division title, I'm like, okay, we should be like the Patriots for a few years, and then you guys got good really quick, and I'm like, we didn't get to enjoy that shit for it all. Now everything's gonna be hard. It's not because we were all terrible. The Patriots won Super Bowls, but the division title was a joke back then because they were gonna go 6-0 or maybe 5-1. They might lose to the Dolphins, and oftentimes everybody got swept most of the time. But we beat Brady 3 times. We were 3-35 against Brady, and I think the Jets were 6-something against Brady. So, and the Dolphins won 12 games out of 12 or 30 or whatever. But
sometimes weird things happen down in Miami, but for the most part, Brady dominated us too. So, it was rough.
Yep. So Jackson and then Brett, who do you think John? Because there's a possibility Jonathan Taylor might not even get traded because somebody might not want to put the money or the picks out there. But if he does, is there any team that you can see him go to, Jackson, and then Brett, you can go right after him?
I think it was you, Sean. I think his most likely team is going to be the Bears. I just think that fit is perfect. That's a run-first offense. With Justin Fields and JT back there, that would just be lethal. Defenses would have to prepare for DJ Moore coming in. They still have Chase Claypool. They still have Darnell Mooney. I would really like the potential of that offense. But in my personal belief, I don't really think he gets traded. I don't see a team giving up a high second pick and then also on top of that paying JT, a running back. We saw Saquon, he signed $10 million per year this season. We have all these other Zoom meetings with the running backs. They're complaining. The market is just depleted. So I just don't see a team right now spending 14, 15, 16 per year on a running back right now. Even as good as JT is, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you, Jackson. But of the teams that I think he could go to, I'm just looking at over the cap right now to see what teams have enough salary cap to even afford it. Teams that come to mind for me, I mean, I look at the Cleveland Browns. They have enough salary cap to be able to pull it off, and they need to make a move to be able to solidify their spot in the AFC North. That's a move that they can make. You talked about the Panthers, Sean. Frank Wright, he was the coach with Jonathan Taylor, so that would make sense for him to go there. But the team that really interests me is the Arizona Cardinals, and I think that could be where he ends up. And while they're a team that they have a good defense with that Jonathan Gannon's going to run there, they just need a couple of pieces to solidify around Kyler Murray, and especially with the amount of sacks that he's been taking lately, he could use a security blanket like Jonathan Taylor. And you just lost DeAndre Hopkins too. So to put a guy like Jonathan Taylor in there to be able to hand the ball off to and take a little pressure off of Kyler, I think that would fit very well. And to go along with James Conner as well, I think that would be a really good fit. A team that I know Sean and I and probably the rest of the AFC Summit would not like him to go to, and this is a team that still has enough salary cap to pull it off, the Cincinnati Bengals. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Imagine that team with Joe Mixon and having Jonathan Taylor. They can pull it off. I'm telling you right now, they can. They have enough salary cap to do it. But the problem is they have a ton of players that they're going to have to pay, like T. Higgins. You also have to pay Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to even pull that off. But if they were to do it on a, what we called in the MLB, the, fire sale type of move where the guy's at the end of his contract and you just use him for the year or two that he has on his contract, that's understandable. Maybe they don't re-sign him, but they just keep him for 2 years and try and win a Super Bowl. That could be what the Cincinnati Bengals do, because they're in a win now mode just like the Buffalo Bills. And that's where I think that if Buffalo were to go after Jonathan Taylor, it would be to sign him now on his contract that he has right now and then we don't re-sign him, and then we just let him go. But it's just
Isn't that
you're getting picks and stuff.
isn't that Jonathan Taylor's whole issue with the Colts right now, though, is that he wants an extension, he wants running backs to get more respect.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll tolerate being traded somewhere and the team that trades for him says, we'll give you a contract next year?
Yeah, no, he definitely wants an extension up front.
Yeah. That's why I think he's not going anywhere, is because of the teams that I'm looking at there. Those are Super Bowl window teams that, besides the Arizona Cardinals and the Panthers, the teams that could go after him are Super Bowl window teams, and they have a lot of players that they're going to need to re-sign. And I just don't think that with the amount of money that Jonathan Taylor wants and commands, they just can't afford to keep him on their roster. And that's why I think that the best situation for him to do is just let bygones be bygones, play out your contract this year, and you can go look for another team next offseason.
Do you think that his relationship with the Colts could be repaired, though? It seems like he's pretty steadfast in his wanting to get out of Indianapolis.
No, he needs to get out. I mean, especially when your owner is coming after you, that's a different story.
Yeah.
I think that took it to the next level, and Jim Irsay, needs to stay out of it. That's one thing. But, Jim Irsay is somebody that he has to speak his mind. And, there's some owners that do that, like Jerry Jones has to speak his mind.
Yep.
It's understandable. I get it. You're the owner of the team. You got to do what you got to do. But, it could have been prepared. Now it can't. It's to the point where it's too much. And it's sad that it happened that way, because I have a lot of respect for the Indianapolis Colts as a franchise. And, I think that he would fit very well there, but now it's going to have to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But let's go into the next segment, signings. So if your team signed anybody this past week or so and you want to talk about it, Jackson, I'll go over to you. And I mean, you can talk about Dalvin Cook again because you weren't able to make it last week. But between last week and this week, if you guys signed anybody, let's hear about it.
Outside of Dalvin Cook, there hasn't been any signings. But this is not really a signing, but kind of Dwayne Brown is going to get activated off the PUP list. So that's a big sign. We need to get our left tackle back. And then also just Mekhi Becton getting named the right tackle starter for this preseason game. So those are kind of two new additions to the offensive line that are hopefully big additions because we need some help up front.
Oh yeah, that's where the games and championships are won.
That's what Robert Saleh always says.
Oh yeah. Brett from the Go Patriots podcast. Anybody from the Patriots get signed this past week or so?
No, I'm actually trying to look it up because I haven't heard anything really about what they've done besides getting Ezekiel Elliott. That's the one move that comes to mind. They did waive a injured receiver to add a defensive tackle. They let go of Marquand McHale, and then they claimed nose tackle Marquand McHale. And then they released let's see who they released. It doesn't say who they released. Oh, Trey Nixon is who they released. So that's the one move that they made. And then in other news about the former Patriots, this one's a big one, another wide receiver. Antonio Brown has an arrest warrant out for him, which is not surprising, the downfall of him. He missed a $15,000 payment to Miltrice Jackson, and that's what's causing the issue in Miami-Dade County. So we might be seeing Antonio Brown in jail pretty soon. So that's nothing to be surprised about. The legal issues that he's going through right now are sad. I don't know if it's something that has to do with CTE or anything like that he's going through, but whatever the help that he needs to get it very soon.
For sure. So Miami-Dade's going to be signing somebody soon, you're saying?
Exactly.
I'm kind of mad at what you guys know he bought a semi-pro team in Albany, New York, and then he screwed everybody over, didn't pay them or whatever, and then was they had to cancel their whole season or whatever. So screw that guy. Everybody thought it was a good thing, and he put his AB-ness all over it, and now it's crap.
Pretty
So,
on brand for AB at this point. It's really sad the fall from grace that guy's had.
Yeah, hopefully, if it's if it's CT related, hopefully he's okay and he can get better. But if it's just him being like that, then there's no need for that.
I will say this: I heard a college teammate say about Antonio Brown once, and I'll keep this quick. But I heard a college teammate say about him once: once you get him paid, that's it for him. He's going to lose his mind. And that's kind of what happened with the Steelers. As soon as he got paid, he just started to go further and further off the deep end.
Yeah,
I'm not saying CTE doesn't play a part in all of this, but I think there was always something inside of Antonio Brown that was gonna go a little nuts, and
you're right.
It's manifesting itself now.
It all started with him being in the Madden curse. That's pretty much what started it. Frostbite. One of the companies that makes Madden with EA Sports. I mean, that's pretty much where it started, was the whole Frostbite with them. So that's pretty much what I say. But I'll tell you this, though, Keith. I'm going to keep it very short with what I'm going to say. I will say that Miami-Dade's jail will definitely beat the Miami Dolphins this year if they play against each other.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, come on down to the jail. See what happens to your Bills.
Exactly.
So,
I'll be
Keith,
crying my ass
did you guys
off.
sign anybody this week?
What's that?
Did you guys sign anybody this week worth
Oh,
mentioning?
we signed Perry Nickerson, a defensive back, who actually played quite well for us against the Texans. We also hosted Bryce Callahan, former defensive back for the Broncos and the Chargers. He's played under Vic Fangio, and we hosted him for a visit. Nothing's been, no terms have been agreed to yet, but I think if the Dolphins get into a little more trouble in their secondary, Bryce Callahan might be the first person they call.
That's good.
Who's the Dolphins cornerback too right now with Ramsey out?
Yeah, that's kind of up in the air. I think Cam Smith probably had the inside track on it until he injured his shoulder in week 1 of the preseason. And then Eli Apple played QB2. Well, he actually played CB1 last week. And because Xavier Howard didn't play, and he was okay. He did a decent job, playing. But I think it's going to be a Cater Co, who's got the inside track on the job as well, but he's more of a slot guy. I think it's going to be more of a cornerback 2 by committee than a solid cornerback 2 until Jalen Ramsey comes back. They're just going to have to kind of stem the tide a little bit.
Right. Well, we signed 3 players. One being Ty Johnson, who Jackson probably knows. 2022, he had 30 carries for $160 with 1 touchdown, average 5.3 yards a carry. Do I think he might make the roster? Probably not. Unless something happened with Harris and he's not going to play, then he has a chance. But I think maybe it's just they plan on not playing a lot of people that are going to make the team in week 3 and using him as a body. Definitely would probably make the practice squad. But a good pass catching back, and from what I've seen over the years, he hasn't been terrible. And then a guy named Garrett McGinn, who had a stint with the Bills in 2019, I believe, played a USFL champion, last year. So he's got championship pedigree. So bringing that over to Buffalo, 6'6", 302, started and played all 9 games. Again, it's USFL, so who really knows how it's going to translate? But he's bounced around the NFL and then again went to the USFL, won a championship, and probably another guy who's just a body. And then Deshaun White, I think he played in USFL too, but all it showed was Oklahoma, stats and stuff. And 6 foot, 218, he could play the mic and he could play outside linebacker. Again, maybe it's a guy to make Dotson like, okay, play better, or this guy's going to unseat you, or again, just another camp body or a preseason body. And just
seems kind of light, doesn't he, Sean?
Huh?
Seems kind of small. You say he's 6 foot 218?
Yeah, it's pretty small. That's why they say he's got flex for both, but
yeah.
6 foot's it's small to the NFL, I guess you could say, and then 218 is just light. But again, if I always say if you could hit hard, if you could hit like your 250, I'm happy with that. But I've never seen this guy play, so I can't attest to that. But
Yeah,
again, we'll see. But again, these guys might not even make the practice squad. They might just be fillers. But I mean, I
right.
like Ty Johnson. I think he has the best shot to maybe make a roster. I mean, again, he might not make a roster spot unless there's an injury, but could be a guy that finds his way into the practice squad. I think he could fly under the radar. Nobody signs him to the roster because they have to be signed to the team's active roster to get claimed off waivers. So I think he could pass, and then we could pick him up on the practice squad. And then if Harris goes down, then you can bring him up as an RB3, and then he'd be pretty solid. But Brett, if you want to talk about these three at all, go ahead. If not, then we'll head on to the team assessments.
Yeah, Ty Johnson's one guy that really I'm looking at that could make the roster just because if Damian Harris is injured, then the Bills could waive him and save a little bit of money, and that could happen. Another player that I do like the signing of was Deshaun White. Yes, he is 6 foot, 225 pounds, but what he lacks in size, he makes up for with speed and quickness, which is two things that the Buffalo Bills needed. He did play for the Michigan Panthers of the USFL following getting drafted, and he had his most successful season in college in 2022. He was a fifth-year player, a senior at that time, making 90 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss. He also had 2 sacks and 2 interceptions overall. And in his 5 seasons with the Sooners, he had 250 tackles, 19 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks and 2 interceptions, along with 2 fumble recoveries and 8 passes defense. So he can play that Mike role that we needed in the offense. And he's somebody that, with the Bills, you saw a lot of what I saw, Sean, with the middle linebacker position the last couple of weeks. We need somebody that can come in and fill that middle linebacker role, whether that's Tyrell Dodson that can do that, or another guy that you have to bring up. But I for sure didn't like what I saw from Tyrell Dodson. Terrell Bernard is injured as well. He can't get out there. He's missing a great opportunity that he could have out here. You also have AJ Klein, who was playing late into the game as well. And, as much as I love AJ Klein, I think that he's a good player. He fits the Sean McDermott scheme that we're running. It's just, he lacks some things. And that's something that you have to think about if you're going to start him at the middle linebacker. I think that he's the most comfortable player that can come in and fill the position right now. But Sean McDermott has to look at somebody that can come in and fill that position. And gosh, there's guys that are out there in free agency like Anthony Barr that you could have went after. And it kind of goes to show you that the Bills did not solidify that position at middle linebacker, and they didn't solidify the position at right tackle, which is concerning. And you have to wonder why they didn't do that in the offseason, because those are 2 glaring holes that we saw. And, I know, Sean, you weren't happy with the right tackle position. That's something that, has been talked about for years. And we haven't solved it. But, hopefully Spencer can straighten up and figure it out. But then you have the middle linebacker position, and it's anybody's to win right now. It's an open competition, which is something that we don't want to see, especially when that person's going to be calling the plays on defense.
Absolutely. But don't get too ahead of yourself, Brett, because we still got you could all lump that into the team assessments of who we need to bring in possibly. So don't spit out all your ideas yet, because we'll do that right now. Perfect segue. So team assessments. Where do you think you guys can add value? What do you think you need to add value to? I'll go first and make it quick. Like Brett already alluded to, middle linebacker doesn't seem like it's locked down, and right tackle sure as hell isn't locked down. Not only right tackle, but we lost Brandon Shell to retirement, and then Tommy Doyle unfortunately suffered another season-ending injury back-to-back years. So we lost 2 of our right tackles just from that 2 weeks alone. And what I've been saying to people, they haven't tried to replace Spencer Brown. They haven't tried to bring him actual competition to see if he's actually about it or not to prove himself. They just basically hand him the job every year. Oh, we believe in him. Oh, he's this and that, but he hasn't proven anything. And year after year, they don't bring any competition for him. I thought we should have drafted a right tackle, and we didn't, unfortunately. And now we're going to be hurting for one. We're one injury away from going from a really bad situation to David Quessenberry, who had a good career, but he's on the tail end of it. So I'm sure if there is any good, decent right tackle that's waived or cut from a team, we're 28th in the waiver wire basically, so we won't get them. So we're going to have to make a trade if we want somebody. I've seen people mention like Calvin Beachum, who's old, and yeah, he's probably better than Spencer Brown, but I'm not willing to give up draft capital for an old guy when we could have drafted somebody young in the last draft. So basically, we got rid of our 4th round pick, for the Jags, so we could get Dalton Kincaid, and there was a bunch of tackles that had great value that were still on the board, who we didn't get. We drafted Dorian Williams in the 3rd round, who was supposed to play middle linebacker, and they said, nope, he's going to play outside linebacker behind Milano, and he's never going to play middle linebacker. So could have also got a tackle in that round. So we screwed that over because they believe in Spencer Brown so much. They don't want to possibly draft somebody better, which isn't hard to do. And now we're going to get bit in the ass for it. So right tackle, middle linebacker, you got to find somebody. If we're going to trade for a tackle, he's got to be young, and you got to find one of those teams where it's like, not the Cardinals, but like the Cardinals, where they're not that good. They might want a pick, and they might be willing to give away a decent starter at tackle for a pick. And we'll see. It's hard to say because tackles are hard to come by, and if they're good, they don't want to give them up. But they might be in a situation where they're like, hey, we need to start rebuilding. We don't see a point in having this guy right now. We'd rather have the picks. So we'll see. But whether they're starter caliber or not, got to bring somebody in because we don't have much left. And I'll throw it to Brett to wrap up if he has anything to add to that, and then we'll pass it to you too.
Yeah, Sean, I think you hit the nail on the coffin with everybody that you picked. I think the one position that I'm kind of concerned about is the depth behind Latavius Murray and James Cook at the running back position, especially with Damian Harris being injured. That's something that concerns me a little bit, even though I liked what I saw out of Jordan Mims. I'm just concerned about what you're going to see with him if he comes up and plays against the number 2s or number 1s. So I don't think those numbers are going to be the same. Everybody else, I think every other position we have good talent at. And I think the other position that concerns me a little bit is the wide receiver position, especially when some players were struggling to get separation. Even though I did like what I saw out of Gabe Davis and Diggs, I think that's something that every Bills fan is going to worry about is how much separation can the receivers get, and especially with the depth behind those two, it's a little concerning. But Trent Sherfield did step up pretty big. He had a good catch overall in the middle of the field. Liked what I saw from him. I'll go to the Patriots too because I want to segue into them since I am the representative for the Patriots, and I think they need to upgrade every single position pretty much. I'm not very happy with all the positions that they have. I still think they need to go after, they need to get a new head coach. That's something that they need to do. I'm not happy with the head coach. Owner is horrible too. He likes to, do illegal things too as well. So, that's understandable. I just think they need to upgrade the whole entire thing. I think they need to take the team and put it in the river and just get rid of them. That's pretty much what I say. And give the Bills the 6 Super Bowl rings that they have. So my take on it. But no, overall, I do think that the position that they do need help at, especially on the offensive side, the one thing that concerns me a little bit is their depth on the offensive line. I think that they can improve there. Every team can, though. But I think they have a really good defensive line that looks really good. Cornerback is another position that needs a little bit of depth as well. I think that they're going to bring somebody in, to be honest with you. But overall, I mean, they have a talented team, and Bill Belichick's going to be very good getting this team disciplined and back into contention to make a run in the AFC East.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate both your stances representing the enemy. Going over to Jackson. Before you go, though, I'm going to say I think your probably weakest position, I could be wrong, I want to hear your opinion on it, is probably safety. And part of it is because you lost, was it Chuck Clark as well?
Yeah, Chuck Clark.
But do you feel like that's your weakest room? And again, go ahead with who you'd like to add, or a position you'd like to add, or that you're worried about, or you need more depth at, or anything like that.
Weakest room on the defensive side, I would agree with that, safety. Just because Jordan Whitehead last season, he was not worth the contract we signed him to. He wasn't a bad player by any means, but he missed a lot of tackles. He wasn't great. And then we have Tony Adams, who apparently has been flying around the field making plays everywhere throughout training camp. But again, he's an undrafted free agent from last season who hasn't played in too many games, so that's a big question mark. And we brought over Adrian Amos, who is another strong safety. So we kind of don't. Tony Adams is kind of only our true free safety. So I would definitely say that's our weakest link on defense. And then also our linebacker depth. We have CJ Mosley, who's getting up there in age, and Quincy Williams. And then outside of that, we have Jamie Sherwood as our linebacker 3, who's coming off an Achilles tear. So he'll be in his 3rd season. We haven't really seen him play much in the NFL. So kind of some question marks if we get injuries in the safety and linebacker room. But our corner depth and our defensive line depth, I feel very solid with. I'm very excited about that. And then I would say on the offensive side of the ball, I would actually say the offensive line could potentially be like the weakest room on this entire team.
Yeah.
Just because we have Mekhi Becton coming back from injury, who hasn't played a full season in his entire career. He hasn't played the last 2 seasons at all. I will say last game he looked like an absolute monster. So I'm just praying that he can stay healthy this year and lock up that right side. Yeah, and then Dwayne Brown coming back, mentioned previously. He's 38 or 39 years old, so he's up there in age, so he's injury prone as well. And then Laken Tomlinson throughout his career, our left guard, has been healthy, but last season he was horrendous. He could not pick up a stunt to save his life. He was missing blocks left and right. And then our right guard, AVT, I believe, if he can stay healthy, I think he will be a Pro Bowler this year. I think the whole NFL will know his name by the end of the season.
Definitely.
And then our running back room, I feel very solid with, especially if Reese can come back healthy. And then just having Michael Carter and Izzy Abanikanda as our 3 and 4 running backs, I feel very solid with the overall depth and the talent of this team. So I'm just excited to have a good roster and actually going into the season with some hopes. It's been the first time in my life.
Yeah, you know what? And Brett mentioned he had some questions for me, but I've watched a lot of Jet creators for years and years. The main one, Jet Central. I think he's the
I love Jet Central. Yeah,
and throughout the years, this guy was the nicest guy. He's always so positive. You guys would be like 2 and whatever, and he'd be like, gotta try to find the positive in here, and like the Jets could do this, and the guy still pumped out content when it was like terrible Adam Gase years and just awful.
It's been hard, yeah.
So, I mentioned that you weren't here, but I mentioned how what annoys me about the Jet hype isn't that you guys are good, because you do have a great, fantastic team, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of a Bills fan who, when we were good, they always said, "Oh yeah, you won a division, but do it again." Oh, you beat the Patriots, you got to do it again. And then, you won a division twice in a row, now you got to do it again. Oh, you went to an AFC Championship. Oh, you still got to do more and do more. And then now all of a sudden, we lost in the divisional round after we won 13 games and we're Super Bowl favorites. Now some people, not you guys, but some people got us being 3rd, maybe missing the playoffs. And then everyone's like, "Oh, the Jets are Super Bowl contenders." And you have a Super Bowl contending team for sure, but it's like you also haven't made the playoffs in a long time, longest drought, and then you're coming off of a 7-win season. So it doesn't annoy me that you guys are good, because I actually love it, because when you really think about it, isn't that what we all really want? Yeah, we all want to win a division, but isn't it boring when it's like, oh, the Patriots must have been bored. Oh, guaranteed 6 wins already in a division. No, it's easy. But now it's like we're going to be more – the rivalries are going to be stronger. It's going to be a bloodbath every single game. But so I don't hate the Jets. I'm not annoyed that they're good. It's just from my stance of being terrible for 17 years, we had to do so much to even gain a little bit of respect. And then I just felt like just because you guys got Aaron Rodgers and a couple good players, everybody was like, oh, that's all it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but that's why
No, I totally get that.
I know you
Especially with
weren't here, but my point of it all was you guys should be excited. You should be super happy. I'm not going to say you guys went through more than Bills fans because you did get a Super Bowl and you did go to 2 AFC championships with Mark Sanchez in 2010 and 2009, right? Or was it 10?
It was 09 and 10.
Yeah, so yeah, you had a long playoff drought, but you had some good years too. And it's awesome that you guys have something to be excited about. And even some creators, they were just like, I'm not buying any Jets gear. I'm not going to a Jets game to support this team because they don't do anything to make us motivated. And those guys now are just like, I can't wait till week 1. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to go to all the games.
Everyone's bought in, yeah.
I'm just like, good. I like that. And it's a fun thing that everyone should be happy about. And with 4 teams being fantastic, like I've seen a lot of people, I know I'm rambling. I'll get to Brett's questions in a sec. But a lot of people think like Bills, Jets, Dolphins are going to win 13, 14 games. I'd be surprised if anybody won 11, if I'm being fair, just because of how good our division is and then how good the rest of the schedule is. And it's not going to mean that we're a bad team if we win 10 or 11 games. But to say that right now say we'll probably win 13 or 14 games, I feel like that's a little bit too high for all of our expectations just because looking at it right now, these teams are all fantastic. And we got to see how it goes throughout the year because injuries happen or teams may not be good as we think they might be. And, going to be interesting. But, Brett, I'm sorry. I know you got questions, so go ahead.
Yeah, Sean. I was going to ask you a couple of Bills questions. Sure. I know that there's been some talk about a couple of guys on the Bills. One being a player that could come back to the Buffalo Bills, and I wanted your opinion on this. What are your thoughts on the Bills grabbing Jason Peters?
Oh, I love it. I mean, not only because it'd be he was undrafted to the Bills in 2004, and it'd be a nice 20-year anniversary to that. But he's been a pro personified his whole career. I think he's got 6 first-team All-Pros and like 4 second-team All-Pros, and he won a Super Bowl. And he might not be prime Jason Peters, but he's a guy that can come in, even help guys like Deion Dawkins. I think Deion Dawkins is the most tenured offensive lineman we got. And not that he's not good, but a guy like Jason Peters, who played left tackle for basically his whole career, can even give Deion more tips and help him improve as a player. And he can even help a guy like Spencer Brown. And, he's a good, if not, he played a little bit of right tackle, but he can back up Spencer Brown or Deion Dawkins. And he even played guard for Dallas too. Or he can come in on heavy packages and things like that. So I would love it. I don't think he'd demand a lot of money. And I feel like you should at least pick up the phone. I don't see, especially with the situation we're in with tackle depth, I'd love to bring him in. And people say, oh, he's old. But, I mean, who's that guy from the Rams who won a Super Bowl? He was like 40. Whitworth. And then, like you said, Dwayne Brown's old. And, he's not the same player he was back in the day, but he's still out there starting and doing decent enough to continue to earn a job. So I don't care that he's 40. I think even though he might not be a starter, he could bring more than just a depth piece. I think he can help all these guys in general because, like I said, I think Deion Dawkins is in like year 7 or 8, and he's old, the most vet guy we got in the line, maybe rival with Mitch Morse, but even so, he could help tremendously. So I definitely would love that.
And then my second question, a player on the Buffalo Bills that you haven't heard a lot about, Reggie Gilliam. I was curious your thoughts, number one, on do you think that the Bills should move on from Reggie? I know that this is a guy that Jake Podger loves. He's going to be upset with me for even bringing up this question. But looking at what the Bills have done overall in the preseason, the Bills haven't used their fullback hardly at all. And it's a position that, you can use for another roster spot on the team.
Yeah.
Do you think
so?
Time to move on from him?
Yeah, I think it's tough because he does play special teams. He's good at special teams, and he is listed as a tight end and fullback. So you have that. He fills an extra roster spot for tight end as well, which is nice because we run a lot of 12 personnel this year, and if one of them goes down, you have Morse, and then say Kincaid goes down, and you got Morris and Knox, and then Reggie Gilliam's already suited up as a fullback. Then he's there just in case break glass. And then he's made a couple touchdowns for us. He runs the ball pretty good, catches the ball pretty good. I think it'd be hard to move on from him, but if we're not really using him later in the year when it comes to the trade deadline, maybe a team would like him and might have to move on. But I think it's too soon to do that. I like him as a player. I think he brings a lot of dynamics to the team, so I'd keep him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
You got any other questions? And then
Sean and Brett, I got a question for you guys,
sure,
if you don't mind.
Sure.
So coming from Boise State, I'm a big Khalil Shakir guy.
Nice.
And I haven't heard you guys mention him the past couple episodes, so I was kind of wondering where's he at with everything?
Yeah, so not me, but a lot of people are even talking about him not making the team. And I just think it's crazy. People forget that he did do a lot of good things for us, and he had a couple drops, but then people are, when Gabe Davis had some drops, everyone was like, oh, it's fine, whatever, don't worry about it. And then Shakir drops one ball in the preseason game, and they're like, he's got a drop issue. He might not make the roster. Andy Isabella might make the roster, and Justin Shorter might make the roster over him. If I'm being honest with you, I think that's just talk for people to talk about something, for controversy. I really don't think that he would, if anything, he'd be a trade. They would never just cut that guy because there's absolutely no way in hell that you're going to get him back on the practice squad. He'd be immediately picked up. He's also proven more than a guy like Justin Shorter. He's also proven more than a guy like Andy Isabella. Andy Isabella didn't have a bad camp, but I think Shakir is still a lock to me. He didn't have the best training camp from what people say, but again, I wasn't there to actually watch, so I'm not going to take everybody's word as gospel because there's always conflicting things. Like for Torrance, a lot of people said he looks fantastic. Then some people said, oh, he had bad days here and there or whatever. Or some people said, oh, he was awful. So, again, I don't really trust people reporting from camp often, even if they're, a great reporter or whatever, because they might see something differently. So I think Shakir is still a lock on this team. I think, he may have a concentration issue once in a while, but he's a guy you don't want to move on from because I guarantee you're going to regret it. Again, and a guy like Justin Shorter, Andy Isabella, I think they can go through what claims and maybe not so much Shorter because of his size, but I think at least Isabella could go through waivers and you could pick him back up. So I think he's a lock as a wide receiver 5 if they put Short. Hardy, so like they put Hardy over him, a lot of people. Hardy hasn't impressed me at all. We gave him a big contract, and like everyone brings up, he was an all-pro returner. That was true. But as a wide receiver, his best year was 500 receiving yards, and he got 200 in one game. So, I mean, I really don't see why we paid him so much money for a 2-year deal. He might find his way out of Buffalo if it's a possibility. But I think Shakir will stay. A lot of people are off of him now. Not me. I like him and what he can bring. I think he can play on the boundary. I think he can play inside. And, I think people are just prematurely throwing him out the window, and which a lot of people do in Buffalo. They hang on to one person. They say, get this guy out of here. Or, we have someone else. I was a guy like I loved Isaiah Hodgins. And I said for years, get this guy in the game. Let him play. He's always balled out in preseason. He has a great catch rate. He has a great frame, great value pick where we got him. And then the 1 year we put him on the practice squad after we got rid of Dayball and Sheen, the assistant GM, they picked him up like that. He was a wide receiver 1 in New York. So we kept Jake Kumaro over him. And I don't know if you guys know Jake Kumaro, but he's not good at all. Long story short, I'll keep him. And Keith, you got any holes you want to fill? I know sorry guys, came off pretty wrong, but
well, look, let me say this. The Dolphins have had a quagmire at left guard since the season's begun. Liam Meikenberg hasn't filled that void. It looks like Isaiah Wynn might be able to fill that void. Dolphins have held out Teron Armstead throughout most of camp. In his first practice was a joint practice against the Texans. He went down with a knee injury. It was almost catastrophic. It looks like he's trending towards hopefully maybe playing week 1. I mean, we're hoping that he'll play week 1. Thing is, with the Dolphins' offensive line, they were kind of a Jekyll and Hyde unit last year. When Teron Armstead was in there, they were a solid unit. When he was out, they were really bad. They were really, really bad. So the Dolphins' success and failure on the offensive line hinges upon an oft injured left tackle, who's already injured, and their quarterback behind this offensive line is not exactly a beacon of health. These aren't encouraging signs. This isn't a recipe for success here. Next, you have Jalen Ramsey going down, first practice of training camp. Goes down with a torn meniscus. They're saying he's going to be back by December. He's saying November. Either way, you're without your best defensive player for half a season. Next, you have Xavier Howard with the allegations that have come out against him. Basically, if this is true, he allegedly, it's basically revenge porn against his former girlfriends. And on top of all that, before all these things even happened, you have Tyreek Hill on that boat in the marina where he, nobody really knows exactly what happened at the marina that day. The only people who do know are the people who were there, but wheels were greased and the whole problem went away. But the problem is that the news coming out of Miami is not good news. You're not hearing warm and fuzzy things. You're hearing some things like Jalen Phillips is having a hell of a camp, and but Christian Wilkins is having a hold in. He's not holding out. He's having a hold in because he wants a new contract. There aren't good stories coming out of Miami, and these are not the kind of stories you want from a team that's supposed to be competing for a Super Bowl. Conversely, you have the Jets signing Dalvin Cook. The biggest offseason story for the Jets was won't they sign Aaron Rodgers? Won't they match Green Bay's asking price? Well, spoiler alert, they did. They did match Green Bay's asking price. And now Aaron Rodgers is in the fold. So the Jets have added a Hall of Fame quarterback onto a championship level defense. And then the Hall of Fame quarterback takes a $35 million pay cut to add more talent onto the roster. The biggest story out of the Bills this offseason was the beef between Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, and that seems to have gone away. They seem to be focused on winning a championship in Buffalo. And even New England, one of the big stories was Bill O'Brien taking over. And Bill O'Brien's a good coach. Bill O'Brien taking over as offensive coordinator, I should say. Bill O'Brien is a good coach. He's a good offensive coach, a sharp offensive mind. And he should be able to get the best out of Mac Jones. So from my perspective as a Dolphins fan, you have 3 teams that are trending upwards, and you have one team, the Dolphins, who can't seem to get out of their own way. And it's concerning because this was supposed to be a championship season for the Dolphins. And there is time for them to turn this thing around. There's time for them to right this ship. But we're getting to the 11th hour here, guys, and time could run out, and this could turn into a lost season for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about what the Dolphins can be. The talent's there. The talent is evident to anybody who's paying attention to it. But, they feel like a house of cards right now, and a breeze will blow them over. But the thing is that looks like they're facing down a Category 5 hurricane. And it feels like that at times. And I'm concerned.
Very fair points, my friend. I got 2 quick questions, one for Jackson and one for Keith, and then we'll get into final thoughts for everybody and call it a night. So since Keith's already just getting done talking, I'll go back to him again. How's Waddle? And I know they say week 1, but they also said week 1 for Byron Jones last year, and he never returned. So how do you Do you think it's just smoke and mirrors that he's actually going to be back week 1, or are you concerned about whatever his injury is? Because I'm not even so sure what it is. And just talk about how you think he's progressing, and do you really think he'll be back week 1, or do you think it's something that's going to take a little bit more time?
I hope he'll be back week 1, but the Dolphins have been pretty tight-lipped regarding Jalen Waddle. It was an upper body injury. I think it's a rib injury. I think even if he does come back week 1, he'll be on a snap count. But I think the way Mike McDaniel described it was the Dolphins are saving Jalen Waddle from himself. Jalen Waddle, I think if he had his choice, he'd be out there.
Yeah.
But, but again, this preseason, you just want to get out of it unscathed, and Jalen Waddle wasn't lucky enough to do so. So I think right now they're just saying, okay, you are not unscathed. You are done for the rest of the training camp. We're putting you in bubble wrap, and we'll see you in the regular season.
Great point. Brett, if you could bring up Mike's comment before I get to Jackson's question. This is another question for Jackson. He said, let me spell better. Did Jackson see any drops from Shakir at Boise State that left you shaking your head?
I personally did not. I only saw, because the talent that Boise plays is definitely a lesser talent than our skill players. So, and he just shined. I just saw him take the top over defenses. I saw him find the soft zones. I saw him just absolutely obliterate those defenses. He was a joy to watch. But at the same time, I also did have a few beers watching those games, so there might have been some plays I might have forgot about or wasn't watching. But from what I saw and what I remember, he was a monster out on the field.
Love it. And to the Bills Mafia that are watching, let's not forget when Dawson Knox was a rookie, he had 10 drops, and it was a big issue, and then he fixed it. He still drops it once in a while, but sometimes drops happen. Shakir isn't nearly as worrisome with drops that I was with Gabe Davis for the last 3 years. But let's not give up on him so quick. Like, relax.
The NFL is hard. You got to give these guys some time.
Yeah, I mean, and I forgot where it was, and I've been mentioning it on other people's shows. There was a stat I found, and I don't know where it was from. Don't know really anything about it besides I remember what the words were. It was comparing receivers getting open compared to how much targets they get. And Shakir was at the top of the list of being open and not getting targets. So everybody was like, oh, he can't get open, he can't catch. He was on the field 70% of the time and didn't get any catches. He was open. Apparently, according to that stat, I don't know where I saw it. I don't know where it was from, but I remember seeing it. I'm not just making it up. And he was open a lot and didn't get many targets. So, yeah, he was on the field a lot. But according to that stat, again, don't know where it was from. It was last year. He didn't get any balls thrown his way when he was open because he was open quite frequently. So let's not forget that. And my question to you, Jackson, was do you personally want to see Breece Hall at all? And if you don't, when do you want him back? When do you feel comfortable having him back?
The fact that he is already off the PUP list and he's already practicing at 11 on 11s, I would feel comfortable him playing week 1 as long as the team doctors, everyone agrees, obviously. But I don't want him to be the workhorse. I want Cook to be the workhorse for the first 3-4 weeks. I want Breece to get 5-10 touches, see how his knee reacts, get his confidence up before fully giving him the reins. But because Dalvin's here 1 year, we can. It sounds kind of bad, but we could risk giving him a lot of carries early on. Breece is here the next 3 years, potentially longer if they extend him.
Yeah.
So I want to prolong his career. I want to make sure he's healthy for the next 2-3 years. So I want to run Cook into the ground the first half of the year, and then let Breece take over.
That's cold, Jackson. That is ice cold, man.
Great point.
Yeah.
run him ragged. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But all right, now we're getting to closing thoughts. So Brett, go ahead for if you want to mention the Patriots at all, go for it. But so your final thoughts, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, closing thoughts for me, I'll just say this. I'm not the Patriots rep, to be honest with you. I'm glad I'm doing it once and I'm done with it, to be honest with you, because it's not fun to do. I like talking about the Bills just as much as all my other brothers on the Bills side, but, wishing them all the best this year, except for against the Buffalo Bills. Hope they have a successful year. Everybody stays healthy. That's the most important things. And then, made the best team win in the AFC East. That's the biggest things. And then for the Bills, I'll just say this, this is a tough time of the year for the players that have been, working their tails off all around the NFL. It's a tough week to see after this week where cutdowns happen. But, just want to say to everybody that's been a part of the organizations across the NFL, congratulations on the opportunity that you've had. The most important thing is, to keep your head high, work through, everything, work on your craft, hone your craft. And, you put some game film out there for other teams, even if you didn't make the roster for the Buffalo Bills. We wish you all the best. We appreciate you. And, thank you for being a part of the organization. And we wish you well going forward with wherever you go. And we'll be rooting for you.
Love it, my friend. Keith, send it your way, man. Final thoughts.
Well, week 2 in the preseason was a step in the right direction. They played a much better game against the Texans. Admittedly, the Texans are a team that's, a bottom dweller right now. They're up and coming. They've got some talent coming up and some nice picks, but they are a bottom dweller, and the Dolphins picked on them as they should have. So, last week was a step in the right direction, but the Dolphins still need to clean some things up along the offensive line, along the special teams, their return team, their kick coverage team has not been good. The Dolphins need to continue to improve. They need to focus on doing the little things correctly. And this is what training camp is all about. And the fact that they had this step in the right direction against the Texans is encouraging, but they need to continue. They need to continue chopping the wood on this thing because they are not a finished product yet. They are not a team that looks like they are ready to compete for a Super Bowl right now, even though it is preseason. So keep chopping that wood. Keep improving, guys.
That's all we can ask for. Jackson, my friend.
Pretty excited for the last preseason week coming up. Let's just pray that all of our teams can stay healthy, stay on the field. And I'm pretty excited because tomorrow will be the first time our starting offensive line will be together all camp. So I'm hoping it's a short amount of time, but I'm hoping in those next couple of weeks they can get some communication down, some chemistry down. And I'm also super pumped to see Aaron Rodgers this preseason game. The first time wearing the green and white. I'm excited to see it. Hopefully it's quick passes. Hopefully he's handing the ball off a lot. Just excited to see him out there, and just cannot wait for football. And thanks for having me on. It's always a good time.
We love having all you guys on, and I love doing this show. I've had the privilege to be the host from the Bills Mafia the last 2 weeks, and there's going to be obviously a rotation with Mike. I don't know if Mike is doing the rotation, but at least me, Jake, and Brett. Mike should be because he's awesome too. Mike, if you watch, I know you need a break sometimes, but obviously you're in the rotation in my eyes, whether you want to be in it or not. So I appreciate all you guys for always doing your part. We just hit 34 subs. I'd like to get us to 500 by the end of the year. So let's hit 50 first and go to 100, 150, go from there. It helps when you guys like the video, comment, share it out. And again, all that takes no time at all. And we love hearing from you. Whether you're a fan of the AFC East or not, come in. We love to hear your takes and engage in conversation. Again, I don't know when I'll be on here next, but I always appreciate the honor and privilege of representing my team. And quick announcement. Brett and I, if you haven't heard yet, we'll be doing a segment with Nickel City Mafia's page called Red, White, and Ruthless. And we decided we're going to do it on Friday nights. We'll probably start after the preseason, depending, because I know Brett's a little bit under the weather and got a little bit of planning to do. But we'll still have our channels. So subscribe to Go Bills Podcast, Red, White, and Bills. And then we'll be having a segment on Nickel City Mafia as well. So subscribe to them. And I know Keith's going to be working on his channel. Jackson, do you have any future plans for a channel or?
Yeah, I started up a dynasty league with a few of my buddies, so I'm hoping to get like a dynasty league YouTube channel up
That'd
and
be
coming.
sick.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, I'm excited about that.
Let us know, and then we'll start trying to send people over to you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
That's all we got for today, folks. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m., barring, emergencies or things of that nature. Expect us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, like, subscribe if you haven't. Until next time, everybody, appreciate you coming out. Go Bills, Jets, 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 fins up, and whatever the Pats say.